Mythbuster, a program intended to look at stories in the Bible and analyze, is it fictional, as some people contend, or factual, as we believe. Many stories are attacked in the Bible. Adam and Eve, crossing the Red Sea, Jonah, Noah, and many others. In this episode, I am following up the same story of Jonah, and in this episode, I would like to discuss the cities mentioned in the book of Jonah and see if they were really real cities or fictional. Let's go on. In Jonah 1, we read, "Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found the ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. The first city we meet in the book of Jonah, a city by the name of Joppa. Joppa is one of the oldest seaport cities in Israel, with a history goes almost to 4,500 years before, and it's known today as Jaffa. It's located between 30 and 40 miles northwest of Jerusalem. Joppa perches on a high cliff overlooking the Mediterranean Sea and served as the primary port city of Jerusalem. Its low edge of rocks hangs out over the sea and forms a small harbor. It was through Joppa that the timber for Solomon's temple arrived from the forest of Lebanon, as we read in 2 Chronicles 2, 8 and 9. Joppa was also the port through which timber came from the rebuilding of God's temple, authorized by King Cyrus of Persia. Tarshish. Tarshish is a bit controversial, not as clear as Nineveh or Joppa. Tarshish had access to the Atlantic. Tarshish was a major trading location for the Phoenician merchant mariners. Tarshish was an ancient city located in modern-day southern Spain. More than likely, tin, which used to come through the Mediterranean over the ships, will have to go through this port. The contrast between Nineveh and Tarshish was vast. Nineveh was located east of the Tigris River in modern-day Iraq or Mosul. It was more than 500 miles east of Jonah's hometown, while Tarshish, in contrast, was west of Gath-Hepher, his town. In fact, Tarshish stood more than 2,500 miles from Israel in the opposite direction of Nineveh, all the way to the west. It was the most remote destination available to Jonah. Jonah was trying to put as much distance as he could between himself and the Assyrians. Whatever happened to Nineveh, Jonah would not be there to see it. The ships of Tarshish sailed extremely long voyages to bring back all kinds of raw material and items like copper, ores, and exotic animals. As we read in 2 Chronicles 9:21, "For the king's ships went to Tarshish with the servants of Huram. Every 3 years once came the ships of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory and apes and peacocks." Now let us discuss the most important city upon which the whole book is based, Nineveh. Nineveh was the ancient capital of Assyria. Nineveh currently is existent in Mosul in northern Iraq. Nineveh was situated in the intersection of the Tigris and Qusr rivers in modern-day Iraq or Mosul. Excavations have shown a flourishing urban life with niceties such as public squares, gardens, and even a zoo. Excavation on the principal mound in the city Kunjik has shown that it was occupied from 6000 BC to 600 AD. Nineveh was Oren, a royal residence, and was finally established as the capital of the Assyrians about 700 BC. It was established as the main city by Sennacherib, whose successors lived there until its destruction in 612 BC. The city wall of Nineveh had a circumference of over 12 kilometers, and 6 gates have been excavated. It was the largest city in the world for approximately 50 years until the year 612 BC. Until earlier this century, prior to the Assyrian massacre by Turkey in 1915, Christian Assyrians inhabited the ancient Assyrian territories in Hakkari, north of Mold, in Tur Abdin, southeastern Turkey, Jazira in northeastern Syria, Ormi in northeastern Iran, Mosul in northern Iraq, as they had for thousands of years. All these towns were inhabited for years by the Christian Assyrians. The jewel of the Assyrian Empire was the capital city of Nineveh, halfway between the Mediterranean and the Caspian Sea, astride the northern arc of the Fertile Crescent. The mighty fortress city was the center of a feared military state. From the position on the upper reaches of the Tigris River, Nineveh extracted tribute from other famous cities to the south, like Sippar, Babylon, Kish, Nippur, Lagash, and Ur. By 700 BC, Assyrian kings, rich from east and west, traded east and west and carried major conquests. They also sat in the state of Nineveh, city of 71 palace halls. Around them, they built massive stone walls and manned by army soldiers. Sculptures carving panels for the palace of Sennacherib or the temple of Ishtar might pose to watch the most disciplined troops in the world as they marched out through the gates of Nineveh onto the imperial highway leading toward the subjugated territories of Babylon, Syria, and Egypt. Civilians, governors, diplomats, envoys from client states, traders, mailmen, they passed through the city, coming from east and west, from the farthest limits of the empire, to bring their trades into Nineveh. From the ruins, it has been established that the perimeter of the great Assyrian city was about 7.5 miles or 12 kilometers, and in places up to 148 feet or 45 meters wide. This is very interesting, this last point, because Jonah was supposed to travel the city over 3 days. Knowing its length and width, it makes sense. However, he was skimpy in covering the whole city, and after 1 day, he sat down, stating to the king, the nobles, and all the Ninevites, after 40 days, the city of Nineveh will be burnt. Some years after him, another minor prophet came, Nahum. He was also followed by another one, Zephaniah, who also predicted the destruction of Nineveh city. Nineveh then was destroyed apparently by fire around 625 BC, and the Assyrian Empire came to an end, an event which changed the face of Asia. There are recent excavations that happened at Nineveh. The city was uncovered by Sir Henry Layard. Nineveh was excavated by British archaeologists between 1842 and 1932. Foreign missions excavated the city from time to time in the second half of the 20th century. Nineveh is mentioned in the Bible, which partly explains why it is well known. Nabi Yunus. Nabi Yunus, as in Arabic called Nabi Yunus or Prophet Jonah. There is a tell or a hill called Nabi Yunus Tell, is mentioned in a story from the Bible in which Jonah visits the city. His tomb, built on this tell, was destroyed by ISIS in the spring of 2015. This episode was largely related to the cities that you have heard of in the book of Jonah: Tarshish, Joppa, and most importantly, Nineveh. Each one of them had evidence, archaeological and historical. There are nothing fictional about these cities. These are factual, present cities, and remnants and excavation of these cities are still present up till today. So, Mythbuster and Jonah, we meet again in episode 3 when we come to the ending and what type of fish. Until then, thank you.